Hello and welcome to GameMasters Studio, where we'll be talking tabletop role-playing games, tips and tricks to help bring your game at home up to the next level. My name's Jerry, aka Frieden.
And I'm Jared, aka DMF.
Today's topic, we'll be talking about post-game review and reflection. There's a lot of stuff about getting ready for the game, and there's a lot of stuff about running a game. But once the game ends, there's a lot of opportunity that we feel maybe a little bit missed to reflect on what the game was, how it went, compared to your expectations, what you can try to do better next time. And this isn't just for a DM. This is also for if you're playing in a game, when you finish a session, you can take a look back and see how it was. Or if you're watching a game online, if you're watching an episode of Dark Hounds or Critical Role or one of those other episodes that they show online, you can think about it from a very objective point of view, see what they did that you liked, what you didn't like, and how it can help your own game.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we do want to start off when we're talking about all this and we're talking about reflection on the games is you should try to stay positive.
Yeah.
Constructive criticism, working it from an opportunity to improve, from angles of this is what I would like to see a little bit better, because it's so easy to tear something down that you can just rip anything apart. But trying to build it up is a challenge and makes us think objectively. What did we like? What did we not like? And what could have been done to make us like that?
Right.
You know, how can we make it better? How can we improve to try to make a better game and bring it up to the next level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's if you start going if you try to approach this from an aspect where you're not trying to stay positive, it's going to be really easy to just fall down that rabbit hole of just like basically bashing on a game, whether it's your own or somebody else's. So it's really a very important note for the rest of this episode, and for any time you attempt this on your own, to make sure that you're coming from a positive and constructive place. Otherwise, you're just going to be bashing on a game for no reason. It's just going to be very negative and just useless to you to improving your own game.
And I know that I'm very negative and very harsh when it comes to thinking about my own performance and what I've done. So keep that in mind, that even though it's very hard for you to offend yourself, you should still try to take the positive road when you're looking even at things you've done and how you feel about your own past.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're very hard on yourself and you're extremely negative, then you could get depressed about the whole thing. Like, man, my games they're bad, they suck, I don't do good. Like, why do I even try? Like, you're just gonna, again, there's this rabbit hole you're gonna fall down into. Like, oh, why do I even bother? Woe is me. You're gonna turn into Eeyore, and then you're just never gonna want to run a game anymore.
On a related note, I will say that if you feel like you're having difficulty running a game, if you're struggling with a game, talk to your players about it. I've had plenty of times where I'm like, wow, my game, I'm not doing much of anything. The games are interesting. I'm sure they hate it. And then I talk to my players, they're like, yeah, I can't wait to get back in. That was awesome. We're going to see what happens. We got a lot of plans. We got stuff in the works. You may have a negative view that other people don't share. And if you've got 6 people at the table that are enjoying it and you're not sure how well it's going, well, it's probably going pretty well if you got 6 people enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to start by talking about reflecting on your performance as a GM, as a game master, once you're done stepping away from the table and thinking about what you've done, what you could do better. So you can start by improving your game by looking at what you did and how you may be able to improve on that, and also what you did really well. I know I do a lot of rehearsal of scenes in my games. I kind of try to practice monologues, and I think about how NPCs are going to respond to questions. And a lot of times after the game, I look at it and I'm like, well, I didn't get to use a lot of the stuff I'd come up with. The players didn't ask those questions. The topics didn't get approached. But I do still like to spend my time preparing and being ready for what they say. And usually in retrospect, I'm like, wow, that sounded a lot better in the car on my drive over.
Yeah, well, things usually do.
Yeah. You could also look at where did my players really latch on to something? If you have a combat that ends with the players cheering and high-fiving each other, you had a good combat put together. If you have a combat that ends with the players going, oh, okay, it's over, good. then you had something that maybe you needed to engage them a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas where, like, after a game, I'll sit down and I'll kind of just look at the game, and I will try to assess what I did well, what I could improve upon. I see lots of opportunities where I can improve every game. I mean, people typically tend to be harder on themselves than others are, like you mentioned earlier. So I see lots of opportunities where I could improve upon my game, which is important. You want to find those opportunities. And even if the players did think you did better, but you don't think you did better, then that means that you could, in theory, still improve that, and they'll think you did even more awesome the next time. But you also you still want to make sure that you're trying to find things and give yourself some credit for what you have done right. Again, trying to stay positive, and be constructive in that way. Because it's nice, even if no one else is going to pat you on the back, pat yourself on the back a little bit. And you're like, I did run this RP really well. Like, I role played this one section. Like, I have to say, like, I was really happy with how that came out. I thought it came out good.
Part of me feels like players are kind of going to be like the dog, like your dog. You may think things are going awful, but they're still going to love you.
Yeah. And some of that is true. Like, they might not even realize that, like, well, that session run isn't really that great, but I'm still super looking forward to the game, because usually the game is really good. And, Jerry is a really awesome DM, even though I didn't realize, in the moment that session was maybe a little dry or whatever the situation was. So there's still, if you ask, yeah, man, the game's going awesome. Oh, last session was fine. Yeah, no, it was great. I'm still looking forward to the next game. Because not everyone's going to be really taking stock and, like, really assessing, every moment of the game, which is fine. Not everyone needs to. But it's just an important, situation where, like, for you, if you want to improve, you need to be actually looking at your game. You can even if you don't ever plan on publishing anything or putting anything on the internet, it wouldn't hurt to, like, even just audio record your games. You can kind of take the foot player approach. So, like, you have your game on Sunday you sit down and you watch the game footage and you look for all your opportunities that you missed.
And then we also do have the option as GMs to give feedback to our players. That's a really useful tool that I think gets underutilized, because a lot of GMs just have, okay, players show up, play the game, walk away.
Yeah.
You can talk to them a bit about their character development, about their background, how that fits in. You can give them a little feedback, like, oh, you said that you were playing a cautious character, like you were really hurt in the past and you're scared of life, but then you were rushing ahead of the party and kicking down the doors. You weren't really acting towards what you said you want to act to. Do you want to change around how your characters, like what you're planning for your character, or was this just kind of a fluke and you're going to be thinking a little more about what you've already declared later on? Right. Giving those opportunities to the players to see where they may be able to tighten things up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I personally think that there's not enough of that. And I don't really do a lot of it in my games either. I mean, I kind of talk with people one-on-one here and there, but I don't, like, take a moment after the game, like, let's talk about what I observed during this game. I didn't want to break, the continuity of the game, so we didn't bring it up during the game. It's just kind of like a little footnotes, but I saw this and this and this. Again, you want to stay on the positive side. So I would start with any situations where, there was opportunities that might have been missed, or, things a little bit more on the negative side, but then I would move on to the positive so you can end on a nice positive note. So, okay, well, in this one particular game, I noticed that you were kind of maybe not really playing your character the way that he was supposed to be. Again, like you mentioned, you're supposed to be a really cautious character, but you kept kicking in doors. Start with that, but then end on but this one role-playing scene with the Queen was spectacular. There was some nice back and forth, some nice give and take. You really reacted well to how I would have thought you would have reacted to what the Queen had to say, and just be very positive and encouraging, and just say, I just think that maybe make sure that you're keeping in mind that your character should be a little bit more on the cautious side, not kicking in every door that he sees.
And that's also, there's a bit of psychology there for interacting with somebody. When you say the word "but," then you kind of erase what you've previously said. So if you say positive thing, but negative thing, then they're going to see the negative thing outweighing the positive.
Right.
If you say negative thing, but positive, then they're going to go, okay, so overall it was positive, with maybe there might have been a little part that wasn't, but overall it was good.
Right.
And that's just, psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with your players, you're going to need to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this isn't just for GMs, as we said earlier, players. Players have a great opportunity because players usually don't have as much pre-game prep to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then they play the game and they kind of walk away. So they have that free time. The DM may also be using post-game time to, okay, let's wrap up what happens here, figure out what's happening next. How does this impact all of what's going on in play? Where the players just kind of bounce into the world, cause things to happen, and then bounce off and back to their own lives. So they can take a lot of more time to look at what they did, what other players did, and what the DM did during their games, and then kind of reflect on that in order to kind of improve their own game.
Mm-hmm.
This includes improving the game, as it were, with the campaign.
Right.
This is something you've done that I really liked. You tell that to the DM, then the DM is going to think, well, how can I fit more stuff like that in the game, if that's what they really like?
Mm-hmm.
This is how you can also kind of transition if your game is a bit more hack and slash and you want it to be a bit more on the role-playing side. Be like, hey, I really like that sequence we got to do with the guards. That was actually really fun to just kind of talk circles around the guy and bamboozle him and get through the gates.
Right, yeah.
And then, the DM will go, oh, okay, they want more role-playing. They want more conversation. They want more interaction with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to help skew your game towards the type of game you want to have.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity as the player. You get to... you're right there at the table. You get to kind of be the witness to what's happening. You from the DM side, you can see what they're doing. You can see what you like. You know what you like. You know what you don't like. So the DM is going to always be able to tell every situation. Like, yeah, they should be paying attention to the table, but there's a lot of players at the table. They're not going to catch every little micro expression of the table to know what's going through everyone's heads. So if you share that with a DM, you'll be able to together collaboratively come up with a much more enjoyable game for everyone. Also, from the player's side, what kind of sparked this whole kind of concept, and when I was talking with Jerry earlier, is when I get to the few opportunities that I have to be a player, I tend to look at the game both in the moment, but even more so after the game, and look at what I liked from the DM aspect and what I didn't like. Anything that the DM was doing at the table that I really enjoyed as a player, I can look at how did they do it? Why did I enjoy it? How was it that they approached this that made me enjoy this so much? Is this something that I already do? Is this something that I could do myself? Is this a different skill that I don't use typically or have that I could learn? And even more importantly, honestly, is things that I don't like. I don't want to say it's easy to run a good game, but a good game is a lot of this. You see a lot of it all the time. The same kind of skills. They tell a good story. They run a good combat. They have some cool hooks. Not all of that is always a new or unique skill, but anytime you see something or you instantly identify, I don't like what's happening right now, or you look back on the game and like, well, I kind of didn't really like how this one scene went because of whatever reason. If you can identify that reason, you can quickly add that to your list of things not to do in your own game.
And this also, when we were discussing this before we started recording, you brought up how you'll see something that you're like, wow, I don't like this. Wait, I do this in my own games.
Yeah.
Because that came up and you took that as a realization that this is something that I do. And now seeing it as a player, you're like, well, it's shutting the game down. It's not making it as fun as it could be.
Yeah, it's frustrating for the player. Now I realize, I knew it was a little frustrating, but I didn't realize how frustrating it could be. Maybe I approach it a little bit differently, but still it's the same end result. And
it also, this gives you an opportunity to kind of, flex those alternative options. You can, okay, I know that I don't want to do this because it frustrates the player, but how can I achieve a similar objective without making the players feel frustrated or shut out?
Right.
So how can I have that same kind of thing happen that's fun for the players without derailing or ending the story?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you can become a better GM just by looking at it from that different perspective and being able to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think an important skill for any of the different little subtopics in this episode is you have to kind of be self-aware. You have to be willing to like objectively look at what you do, what your skills are, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and identify those. And from a constructive place, work on how to improve or eliminate, negative habits or bad habits or things that you don't like, and how to accentuate and even further improve upon things that you are good at. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean you can't be better at it.
As a player, you should also be reflecting on your character.
Yes.
I know I've had a lot of characters that I figured out how I want to play them. I come down and sit down to the table, and I start playing, and pretty quickly realize like this isn't going to work out. I've had a couple of characters recently that I've said, in retrospect, they were good characters for a book or for a story, but not for a game. They didn't work as part of the party, or I didn't get to do what I wanted to be able to do with them. So I started changing and tweaking them as we go. If you look, there's a lot of instances of like book series or TV series where a character starts out one way and then changes, and there's no real indication to the change, but they're better after it. So you can kind of do that same thing where you just kind of like, what my character was what I wanted to do when I didn't know how everything would work out.
Yeah.
And now that I've had the chance to play it, give it a shot, to reflect on how it went, now I can try to figure out something that's going to work better in the context of the game or in the context of the character.
Mm-hmm.
You can also give that feedback to help other characters or help other players develop their characters. You can say, hey, I liked what you did with this. That was a really cool thing. I like how you've kind of latched on to this one thing, and that's kind of your character's running joke. You can also kind of be a guide. You're like, hey, I used to do a character that did this, and this was part of the problem that I ran into. You might want to be thinking about how to address that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you want to stay negative. You want to stay positive.
Right.
You don't want to
stay positive.
You don't want to be, hey, you're doing this. I used to do something like that. Don't do it because X.
Right.
You want to share it because ultimately everybody's characters are their own property. People can be sensitive about their characters, but you want to make sure that you can help guide them in things that you see.
Yeah.
And also this may be, hey, I just want to talk to you because like I kind of feel like you shut me down. Like I was trying to do something and you decided that no, we need to skip through all these steps and go right to this option, where we still wanted to go through that and see if maybe there was something there.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another thing too, for like player observing other player. Hey, could you you kind of have this problem where like your character likes to shut down my character, and at first it just seemed like it was something that kind of happened, but now you're kind of turning it into like a trope for your character, like where it's just like this thing where you're constantly shutting me down. And while that might seem funny in a sitcom sort of situation, like I'd like to have a voice at the table too. Like I'm also a player, and I would like to participate without you having to open your mouth and shut me down every time I open mine. So those are. But you got to make sure, again, that this is, especially for player versus, not player versus player, but player communicating to player, make sure that you're very tactful about it. Make sure it's very constructive. Let them know that how, something may make you feel or something that you've observed. But make sure, again, if you can, try to follow it up with a positive. Hey, like, I don't really care for how you kind of shut my character down, but I like the idea of it. And I think that's something that maybe we can play up in certain situations I'd be okay with. But not all the time. I need to have a voice at the table. But I love that thing that you do with this other thing. Like that other idea you had.
I think we could have some great interactions if you let my character have a little more play.
Right.
So rather than just shutting it down, we could have it where like our characters are quibbling. Like they're always arguing outside. Like they're always arguing with each other, and then you get in a fight, and they're like back to back. Yeah. Working as one unit, and they're very dangerous, but then the fight's off and they're right back to like squabbling with each other again.
Right, exactly.
Also, like I was mentioning earlier with the revelation of, having my characters that work great for a book or for a story that don't work in a game, you may see that in somebody else's character.
Right. Yeah.
And that may be a way to help kind of soften the edge. You're like, hey, if this were, a solo adventure, your character would be awesome, in their own like book series.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we need to figure out how they can work together, because if they're in a party of 5 other humans and they want to murder every human they see, then it might not work out so well.
Yeah, probably not so good.
Granted, that's an extreme example that should have been headed off a while ago by the DM or by the player already, but
still, situations like that can arise.
Right.
Yeah. Then we have the last kind of observation method would be just as a spectator. So we have, again, if you're the GM, if you're the player, and then if you're a spectator. So you're not actually participating in the game. You're just able to observe it. There are some times where I've heard about people just being in the room and watching other people in the room play. Maybe you have a friend that plays and they invited you over to watch just so you could get an idea for how the game works. So maybe you might join a future game. Or the more likely, option nowadays would be you're watching, something on YouTube, whether it's our 360 Darkhound series, or it's Critical Role, or Harmon Quest, or Force Grey, or any of those other options that are out there. There's tons of stuff all over the internet nowadays. But this is kind of one of those situations where, you have access to so many different groups, both from, DMs and GMs, and also, just the player interactions. There's so much you can learn if you have the time to just invest, and watch, and not even necessarily watch the entirety of a series. You don't have to go out and watch episode 1 through 100 and whatever they're on of Critical Role. But if you just kind of dab around, if you're just looking for picking up some skills, if you kind of dab around, watch a few episodes of Critical Role, watch the Harmon Quest series is only 12 half-hour episodes, so it's not the longest series. But watch a couple episodes of that.
Binge watch Darkhounds every single weekend.
Yeah, definitely. The Force Grey's another series with Matt Mercer as the DM, but it's a different group of players. It's also a little bit of a different format than Critical Role. Critical Role is 3, 4, 5 hour session that was live streamed. Force Grey's a little more polished. It's half-hour episodes. So it's still a different dynamic, different group, with the same DM. But so they all have different things they can offer. And as the spectator, you don't have to worry about hurting anyone's feelings. You don't have to worry about forcing something positive. If you think it was just overall, I didn't like anything about this episode, you don't have to try to find something positive to share with them when you share your criticism.
I've watched episodes online that I had to stop watching because of production values.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I could if I could give them feedback, that would be a big one is I can't handle this because your sound is awful and I can't tell what they're saying. Or you set it up with a 360, but I can only see one character at a time. So I have to spin my view every time somebody different starts talking.
Yeah.
You can look at those and be like, okay, now I know what I'm looking for when I start looking for future stuff to watch.
Right, yeah. If you can figure out what you don't like and start narrowing down what you do like, then you know what you're looking for. The same can be true, or same thing can be said about many other different situations in your life. But definitely is true in this situation. So if you can watch these different series, say you've already seen every episode of Critical Role. It's extremely popular. A lot of people have seen all 100+ episodes of Critical Role. You can go through and say, these are the things that Matt Mercer does that I really enjoy. But there are some things that he has done in some certain situations that maybe I don't really care for, or maybe I think could have been done better. Or if I was one of those players at the table, I might have been okay with it, but I might have been a little frustrated. Maybe something could have been done different. Or maybe one of the players at the table, you're I don't like how that player is acting. That was kind of rude. Or, I don't think they're being very considerate to other players. I'm not saying that any of this is true or, your opinion on any of these series, but these are different things that could happen. So you have a lot of opportunities to just see other players and other DMs in action, pick up what you do like, pick up what you don't like.
Well, to be fair, one of the things that we wanted to say is if you're looking at a spectator, when you're talking about or thinking about what did I like, what did I not like, never answer those questions with everything or nothing. What did I like? Oh, everything. Well, then go back and look at it. What specifically did you like? Did you like the way that the combat flowed? Did you like the way that the story was presented? Did you like the interesting ideas or the way the characters interacted? There should be something more specific than everything. Yes. Especially, what did you not like? Nothing. So the entire game was perfect. There was nothing that they could have done better, nothing they could have tightened up, nothing they could have presented better, nothing could have been more polished.
And even if it was a perfect game, whatever deity you might believe in real life comes down and runs this perfect game, identify the things about it that are making it a perfect game. Figure out what it is that you want to emulate yourself.
Right.
You know, if they run the most efficient, well-flowing, creative, best described combat you've ever seen, take notes. Why? How? How did they do it? How could you repeat this? How could you begin to mimic this skill set so that you can bring that to your game?
Absolutely. And the flip side is in effect as well. If you didn't like it, what did you like about it? Nothing. Well, if you sat and watched the entire half an hour episode and you couldn't find a single thing that you liked, there wasn't a single joke that made you crack a smile, why did you sit through the whole thing if it was that bad? And what did you not like? Everything. Again, there had to be something in there that kept you watching. You know, even if it was something silly like this guy's accent was hilarious. And it's not like a character accent, just like their natural accent. Well, then maybe you turn that accent into one of your characters because you want to use that.
Sure.
There's always something you can find if you're really thinking critically about it. And there is one last option for reflection that's a little awkward, but we should have a lot of opportunities for that. And that's listening to another player recounting a game you weren't at. When they start talking about their stories and they start talking about, oh, Jared is an awesome DM. I love the games he's at. Oh, really? Well, what does he do? What's some of the cool stuff that he did? What's the tricks he uses? Or you had a lot of fun at your game? Really? Like, what was the best moment? Like, you could tell one story from this game. Tell me what really grabbed you.
Yeah.
You know, then you have a game being filtered through another player, and you're getting to see, okay, this is what people like. This is what people want to see.
Yeah.
And then you may be like, okay, good. I'm already there. I'm already doing this stuff. I'm already presenting that with those voices. I'm already giving players multiple ways to address a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may be like, oh, that's something that sounds really cool. I want to try something like that in my next game because I think that would be better.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, but basically the equivalent of like hearsay filtered through,
Right.
you know, a player or DM's perception. So I mean, it is going to be filtered. It's going to be their opinion, their point of view that they're sharing with you. But like you said, you're going to get to see what they do or don't like about whatever it is story that they're telling you.
And one thing I can say about gamers is when they're in a safe environment, when they know that there's other gamers around, generally they like to tell stories.
Yes.
There's always tales being swapped. Oh, in this game I did this. Oh, that reminds me in this game I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that reminds me of 3 stories I've got. You know.
Yeah, they are old wives that will tell many tales.
But you have fun with it. You can pick up a tip or trick there.
Yeah, definitely.
Piece here and there, make things just a little bit better. You know, maybe next game, one of your players go, wow, that was really cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, even after, like, we were already talking about this earlier today, we did our pre-show on this, and now having done the episode, I'm going to try to, you know, start incorporating, like, 5-10 minutes after, you know, a session from now on, like, because it's something that I've already been doing on my own, you know, introspectively. But, I mean, I think that it's not a bad idea to try to set aside, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, doesn't have to be very long, just a couple minutes after the game. Tell me your favorite thing about the game. Tell me what I could have, you know, like just go around the table just like because some people don't like to say bad things or, you know, even if no matter how constructive it might be, just go around the table. Tell me one thing you didn't like about the game. Tell me one thing you did like about the game. Was there any notes that, you know, that you have for me on top of that? You know, like, you know, does anyone have any notes for each other? Do I have any notes for any of these players? You know, just be sharing, like the safe place. You will not offend me. I can't promise that you won't offend another player, unfortunately, because I am not them, but you will not offend me. I want to learn. I want to improve.
And this, again, as we always talk about, it's about player trust and DM trust and that connection and the social contract and just like we are working together to try to have fun, make it a better game. We're not trying to rip each other apart. We're just trying to make something that we can all enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it comes down to. And let's take some time in our free time after the game to put as much effort into improving the game as we do before we sit down to the table.
Yeah, about having fun, so have some fun.
So thank you for joining us for our show today. As always, if you have any comments on today's topics or any stories you'd like to share about how you used it in your game, feel free to get in touch with us. Also, if there's anything you'd like to hear us discuss, let us know. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/GameMasters Studio. Subscribe for exclusive access to early content and also a few other special surprises and tricks we've been putting up there. You can get in touch with us on Twitter. We are GMS Studios. Available on Facebook for you to like, comment, and subscribe. And we have new episodes coming out every week with more information on running your game. We're posting them on Podbean at GameMasterStudio.podbean.com, through iTunes, and available now on YouTube as well. Speaking of YouTube, check out our Darkhounds 360 VR campaign. Watch us play through, use the tips that you see here, and occasionally miss an opportunity. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. We'll see you the next time that we get back into the studio.